Welcome to the Caribbean Property Investing Podcast, where we share real-life experiences for successful Caribbean property entrepreneurs. Learn about their successes, challenges, and strategies to help you create your plan for financial freedom. Now let's get started.
I love my community. It teaches you the importance of being together even through difficult times. Business owners doing their best to make it through, fishermen and farmers working hard to put food on our tables. Nurses caring for the sick shows me who we are made of. People who care. I guess it's about growing together.
To ruminate, to create your ultimate living space. And at Courts, you'll find what you need. Choose from our wide range of furniture, electronics, and accessories to complete your space. We're here and ready to assist. Give us a call to place your order. Shop online at shopcourts.com or visit us in store. So ruminate at Courts, bringing value home.
Welcome to episode 19 of the Caribbean Property Investing Podcast. We always like to start the show by thanking our viewers and listeners for supporting the show, sharing the show, learning from the show, as well as giving us your feedback. Today, as always, is a really special episode. It's an episode on a subject that a large proportion of our audience has been asking for. It took some time to arrange, but we're pleased to finally have with us Mr. Werner Houson of the Development Control Authority. Most people know it as the Planning Department. Werner, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Anselm. Thanks for having me on your show. I know it's been a long time, a long wait. I've been so busy, so finally I've made it. So I hope I could enlighten you as to whatever questions you may have to ask, and I'll try my best to be as brief as possible and explain as clear as possible.
Oh, well, that's amazing. These are two skills I'm trying to improve myself, brief and clear. So maybe I might learn something from you today. Tell us about yourself, and of course your current role today.
Okay, well, first I'd like to say my name. I think you said my name wrong. You said Warner, but the name is Werner Houson. Um, well, I'm from the community of Mark. I live with my aunt. I have just two siblings. Um, as you know, I work at the Department of Physical Planning, which has the DCA house within it. So most times people speak, they say persons work at the DCA, but we actually work at the Department of Physical Planning, which has the statutory, DCA is another sub-body within planning, which deals with development control. But planning, we deal with forward planning and all of those things. So I am employed with the physical planning section as a physical planning officer. I have worked there I started in 2010. So it's like, 2011. So I'm like 10 years since I've been working at planning. Um, I've, I must say I've obtained quite a bit of experience over those 10 years as a planning officer. I've had a very, I must say, very meticulous and very knowledgeable supervisor. I've also worked with a very, I would say, a highly multidisciplinary team where you have both people with multidisciplinary mixed educational background. You also have persons with lots of experience. I work along the likes of Mr. Cosmas Louis, Mrs. Magdalene Henry Fontenelle, and my supervisor, as you know, Miss Karen Augustine. I must say I've learned quite a bit over the 10 years. Everything to do with land development, from subdivision to the final nail being nailed in a roof and somebody handing you your keys. I mean, I understand all works of development just coming in there. Well, as you know, planning is not my area of academia. I studied at the University of West Indies, where I obtained a first degree in environmental and natural resource management with a double minor, one in marine biology and one in communication and extension. After that, I moved to obtain a master's in coastal engineering and management. So this is where my academia stopped at the master's level, and I I mean I got employed at I've worked several places. I've worked at Lucia um, as a fitter mechanic. That I obtained my a mechanical associate degree in mechanical engineering. That's what I actually went to study at the University of West Indies. And when I got there, I changed my whole life, my whole thought process on life. I worked at OACS as well as an environmentalist. So I've had my fair share of experience, but I mean, what I gathered and got at planning actually cemented everything. It gives you an opportunity to look at life differently. Persons share the experiences with you on a day-to-day basis. You see persons come to you at planning and you get all the realities. It actually hits you. When you sit in an office and persons say, well, oh, he's just in an office, but you always get that one-on-one interaction with people. And I mean, like, as you know, Anselm, that's how I got to know you, by you as a developer coming to planning. And I mean, what I always admire you for, you always come to ask questions, and that's what most people don't do. They wait for when they are faced with the problem to actually come into planning rather than come in and ask the questions beforehand. So that's about me in a nutshell. If I have to continue, I'll take the whole afternoon. But I mean, because planning have done so much and taught me so much. So I mean, that's it for me in a nutshell.
That's a nice introduction. I have to apologize because, like you, I don't like people muddling my name, and so I can't correct everyone. So I stand corrected. I called you Werner before, but I was told that your name was Warner, so I'm happy it's Werner Houson. That's a big name. So Werner, my experience with DCA was my first home, and typically it's 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 seen as a bottleneck for a lot of builders. Forget about developers, just anyone who wants to build a house, their first home, or even an extension. Typically say, boy, you have to go planning, and plan has to approve it. It might take up to 6 weeks, and some people have all the stories about how difficult planning can be. So tell us what's the role of the DCA within the physical planning unit.
Okay, well, the role of the DCA, as I mentioned earlier, well, I work at planning, but planning has more or less, you could say, it's we have two different sections. You have the building officers who do periodic monitoring and evaluation, and you have the planning officers where we look at subdivision of lands, approval of commercial developments, quarries, institutional developments, which are schools, HRBC centers. When I say development of land, you have land subdivision where you have small subdivision, which is from 0 to 5 lots, and you have the larger subdivision, which from 5 and above. So at the DCA, what we really do is we first and foremost we are the ones required to approve developments, and in so doing, we have a guide for developers, which we normally call a checklist. And within that document, it gives you everything you may require de- depending on the type of development that you're actually looking to undertake. So for instance, you spoke about somebody wants to build a small home. First and foremost, to start a home, any development basically required planning permission. The planning permission is not only, persons would say they require planning permission for bank purposes, and that's normally the mistake most persons do. It's not only when you require a loan, you require DCA permission, because development will be guided by the Physical Planning and Development Act. And within there, that's law. It tells you that even the crown is actually binded by the Act. So even the Commissioner of Crown Lands and any part of the state has to obtain permission from the DCA. So when persons are actually starting any structure, it's mandatory to obtain planning permission for so many reasons. First, persons try to obtain it for loan purposes. The bank requires planning permission to get your loan, to secure your loan, so you have to go through the process. Some persons may require it for insurance purposes. If you want to insure structure, the insurance may want to ensure that whatever is there is sound and whatnot. And for our own um, safety, persons just build houses and they didn't do it within a code and the required engineering requirements and those things. So planning permission is something that's critical. You say persons have been saying that it's a bottleneck when persons apply for probably a simplest house at planning. And I beg to differ with that. I mean, like I said, I may be speaking. I'm not only speaking from a planning perspective. I'm speaking as a developer as well. I have done developments while being at planning. So, and I find I have gone through the same process. It's not like because you work there that the authority will give you preference. You have to go through the process. That's what it is. There's a checklist and there's a guide for developers. So everybody has to follow that. Now, when people say there's a bottleneck, normally when somebody applies to DCA and they submit the plans, there's a guide for developers which tells you, which speaks out detail in terms of what is required to submit an application to the DCA. So if someone engages a designer, a draftsperson, an architect, whatever the case may be, even they themselves could be the designer, and they do not follow what is expected as a submission requirement. When your application is submitted and they normally you get what is called an acknowledgement slip, which you as the person who submit the application keeps, and it gives you the reference number so that you could follow up on your application, and it also tells you that within 14 days of submission you will be able to get a response. And normally what happens, and when somebody submits an application, for, and I could speak for the residential arm of it, you within every Friday there is a meeting. Now, in order for this application to go to a meeting, the officer within the particular zone, because St. Lucia for planning, for planners, for building officers is divided into zones. So someone who submits an application for the northern part of the island, which separate into two zones, there is the northern part of the north and the southern part of the north. So there are two zones. So they have two officers for the northern part of the island. So when an application, let's say an application is submitted for grocery, it depends on if the person submits the application the first day and the Friday is a meeting for the officers, that application may or may not go to that meeting, which means the officer has to do a site visit. So which means it would take that person into another week for the application to go to a meeting. So it also depends on when the application is submitted and the time the officer receives it, so that they could go into the field to do a site visit as to where you intend to put the house and everything. After it goes to a meeting and this application is appraised by the officer. Now I'm speaking for a residential house because the planning component for commercial is entirely different. So for the residential structure, it's appraised. So the officer who's appraising the application, there's a committee where all the different officers for the different zones sits on a Friday to appraise those applications. So each officer will have the pile of applications. Some of them may have 10, 20, depends on the magnitude of how developed the area in which you deal with have the applications. And every one of them, they sit at the committee level and they share the application among each other and they go through it. But even before, the officer normally do a preliminary check so that when he comes to the meeting, he could inform his peers that it's missing a survey plan, the site plan is not clear, the details for the roof is, so whatever is outstanding, he will at least point it out. And when they go further into assessing the application, other issues may arise. So when those issues come up, it's put in a list of all applications. It has to be ratified by the chairman. Then the list is placed there for persons to actually call and find out. So the front desk staff now could, over the telephone, could tell persons of the issues. Some of the issues persons are written to, and then they come in to address the issues. Now, the bottleneck persons seem to say that there is a planning is that sometimes you engage a designer, and the time the designer takes to address those issues could be so long, and you, who are the developer on the other end, who does not know the process, would say, but since that my finger planning and nobody's doing anything about it, not paying attention to whether or not the developer himself or the designer has actually come in or addressed the issues. Most of the times, person send drawings and there is no postal address that you could actually write to get that person. They will just put Cashews Post Office. Now, when you put that and you send that to the Cashews Post Office, they let the mails come back to us because there is no true address where you could actually send the correspondence to the person. So all of those little things seem to be what causes the bottleneck.
When we talk about the application, we're talking about architectural drawings. That's what we're talking about. Architectural drawings, as well as other pertinent information required for the submission of the application. So it's architectural drawings as well as other information. So you can continue. So what we're
Yeah.
saying is that after it's submitted, the drawings and the forms that you have to fill out, which includes
Mhm.
the size of the lot, size of the building, name of the owner of the lot, a land register to give proof that it belongs to you, or if it doesn't
And
belong to you,
update
a letter from
register.
the landowner.
Mhm.
Then they have to go to the meeting, and then there has to be a site visit, according to what you're saying, a site visit of the
Yeah.
officer before it goes to the approval meeting. So take us from that point.
Okay. So, as you said earlier, so is architectural drawings as well as you may have engineering drawings because what could happen to it depends. Well, I spoke of a simple house, but um, over the years, I mean, well, there are laws that are now in place. So, instance, the Architects Act has now come into play. So, whereby anybody who's submitting a residential house, which is more than 2,500 square feet, you would require that to be certified by a registered architect. And the act also tells you is only an architect should really practice architectural work when it's beyond a certain footprint. But I mean, persons, there are so many ways of getting it done. A draftsperson could design alongside the architect, and the architect taking full responsibility would certify the drawing. Similarly, that package that you'll be submitting to planning would also have engineering drawings as part of that package because you would have foundation details. So most of those things would come. But with your residential building, you require to obtain health approval before you actually submit your drawings to the CA. So I'm just giving you the basic one, which is a residential building. So you have two tiers. You will have those that are beyond 2,500 square feet, where you would require an architect to certify the drawings. Most times the draftsperson or the designer works along the architect. If the house is sometimes 2 or 3 levels, you'd require an engineer to certify the foundation and all of the structural components of the building. So you may require those other professional certifications as part of your submission requirements when those things are required. So that's
So
what's
when
a basic residential building.
when you submit the first set of documents, um, uh, so it goes to your committee, but it also goes to health at the same time, or it goes to health first,
No,
a department of health
no.
first.
What normally happens for that's for basic residential. All I'm just giving you for the basic residential, but commercial and all of them still require the same health approval. I'm just giving you the basic. You mentioned there's always a bottleneck with a simple residential home, so I'm just explaining. So what normally you would have to submit your site plan, your elevations, your floor plan to health, and health would look at, probably health has to do a visit as well. So you submit those for health approval before. When you obtain health approval, so while you submit to health, I don't work at health, but I think it's a similar process. the health officer would visit the site. They would look at the soil type to see whether you're proposing a free sember septic tank or whether it's too close to a ravine. I mean, health has a standard as to how close a sockaway could be to a ravine. So health look at those things. They would look at the slope of the land. So they would do their own site visit as well. So when you obtain the health approval, so you submit 2 copies to health, health approve it, you have your approval letter attached to your a copy of health, and they keep one for their file. So you now put together your planning drawings, your architectural drawings, your structural and foundation and what roof details, all of what is forms part of a residential package, which you could also always see within our guide for developers. We have it at planning. We could always email whoever wants a copy. They could always come in to get the information. So there is that checklist that tells you what is required as basic submission requirements, and you submit those along with the health approval. When that is submitted at the front desk staff, well, it has to go through the GIS unit to map whatever, and then it goes direct to the building inspectorate side, the building officer side, who deal with residential development as well as they do monitoring as well. So they are the ones monitoring both all residential, commercial, all major types of development. They're responsible to do monitoring. So I'm saying that to tell you, while those officers have to appraise residential building, they also have to be the officers in the field monitoring as well. So the workload is twofold. So there are times persons would actually come in to request to see the officer on a one-on-one and requesting because their drawings may have issues. But when you come in, that officer may not be in office because they are field and traveling officers, because they have to monitor. So they don't only monitor residential, they monitor commercial, they monitor quarries, they monitor touristic development. So that is their role. So the people who do the residential component, they monitor the commercial component as well. So sometimes persons come in, they don't get an opportunity to see that officer because he's in the field. And on a Friday, that same officer have to be in a committee meeting working towards ensuring that the applications that were submitted for residential building have to go to a meeting to be assessed and approved and rejected or deferred, whatever the issue may come up. So most times there is a bottleneck. So the bottleneck doesn't only reside with planning, that they are not facilitating. I mean, I could say, I'm not speaking for planning, I'm just saying I know we are very facilitating. There are times people would come in to an officer, he's out, another officer would seek to assist. There are times that it's not even within my forte to assist, but when the person comes about the issue and they come with their letter, you know, you as a planning person, you work there as a colleague or as an employee, you have to try your best to see how best you can assist. If you cannot explain every detail, you sometimes take your phone and call the officer while he's in the field. So, you know, so persons make it seem like, you know, the people sit on the application, and that's not necessarily the case. Because similarly, in my section, I'm a planning officer, and we also have committee meetings. We have 2 committee meetings. We have one on a Thursday for small subdivision. This is when persons apply to subdivide their lands, or people say cut up their land into 1 to 5 lots. So I sit on that committee as well. That's planning officers. On a Tuesday, we also have another meeting which deals with it's a technical meeting that deals with looking at commercial applications, touristic, quarries, multifamily. Well, people say villas, but not villas in multifamily. You have institutional, you have recreational. So we look at a wide range, but the only difference is that we do not have while we have 2 technical review meetings, but we do not monitor. That's not within our job description. We are not monitoring officers. We are just about doing forward planning, looking at putting policies in place, looking at our fee structure, looking at, you know, those are what we do. We attend a lot of the meetings with all the referral agencies. So we do have our workload as well. So it's something I mean, that's something I've been hearing. Even when people come to the department and they complain, I say, but I would say, excuse me, but sir, But look you here, and I'm not even the officer responsible. And look, I'm assisting you, I'm attending to you. So it is not right to say that every time you come here, people do not assist, because we do our best. Nobody would ever want to see somebody just come standing at the front desk and just standing there and nobody would ask, "Excuse me, sir, how can I assist?" So we always try our best to assist people.
So Anna, so you made the case. You made the case. Okay, so you guys have a lot doing. My question is, okay, so it's gone to the meeting for
Mm-hmm.
for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
You accept it when it's for no reason, for no fault. Everything is fine. It gets approved. What happens then, and what's the typical time frame people can expect to get a response back from client?
Okay,
For
so
simple,
let me explain. So what I'm saying there may not be cast in stone, because there could be so many things that may not allow that to happen. But when the application goes to the committee meeting, a list is generated. So on that list, just let's say you have 20 applications that they dealt with on that Friday. When that list is generated, that list now has to be ratified by the chairman. So first, that list goes to the chief planning officer, or who's the executive secretary to the DCA, because the DCA ratifying the list, the chairman of the DCA who's the one ratifying the list. So it goes to the chief. The list, it has to be vetted. I mean, it has to be, she has to go through it to just to see the different applications and whatnot. When it's vetted, then it's put together in a package. The chairman comes in, he signs it, or it gets to the chairman, or however way it gets to him is signed. When that is signed, the letters are prepared. The approval letters or the deferral letters are prepared, and they are actually mailed to the developer or the client. Now, when there are times when the letters are prepared, each of the officers who are responsible for the application have to put the application together and place it for stamping. There again, you have the front desk staff are the ones dealing with the stamping. For first, they are the ones responsible for receiving the application, putting it together for you to pay your fees and whatnot, and they are also responsible for taking the phone calls when people call to find out what's the issue with the application. When applications are ready for for stamping, they are the ones now who have to stamp the applications. So the officers receive the letter, put the application together. Now, I'm saying all of that, it seems like it's just get your letter put together, but remember, those officers, as I mentioned earlier, are 95% in the field. The only time you would get them in office is on a Friday when they have meetings, because they're out monitoring. They out also going out when they receive an application to assess. They have to go and look at the site too. So when the officer comes in, sometimes on that Friday they try to hustle and bustle and try to put it together. So normally it will take you sometimes 2 to 3 days, because time the letter goes to the client. The client may not necessarily receive that letter, because the mail system that we have there. So that is why you have an acknowledgement slip, so that you could always call the authority to find out the status of your application. And most times the well, I don't want to say most times, but sometimes the drafters or the draftmen, if they are not so in tune with what's going on, they may not call, so they may do it at their whims and fancies and decide to just come a week after, and then all that time the application is probably waiting there for them to collect, and the developer now is on the other end not knowing and saying, but since the day is 3 weeks now, but normally on average in 2 weeks you should be able to get a response on your application. You should know the status of your application. As I told you, every Friday a residential goes to a meeting. So within 2 weeks, there is no reason why somebody should not get a response on the application. Based on my experience and my time working there, I know sometimes the officer, the person may be lucky that they register the application on the Monday or the Tuesday, and that officer may be just about leaving or go, and they take that application the same time and they go out with it and appraise it. So time for the Friday goes to the meeting. There are people who get their approval in within the 2 week factor, or less than 2 weeks, because it doesn't take you to Friday. So it depends on the time you submit it, how often that the drafts person do the follow up and checks and balances with the office, meeting the officer, because when you come then you don't meet the officer. Every single officer has a telephone. So the front desk staff could always give you the number to contact that officer. So that's the process. So when it leaves the front desk staff, after it's stamped, it now goes to the chief physical planning officer, who's the executive secretary to the DCA, who has to sign off those drawings as approval. It's placed back at the front desk. They collect it, place it there for persons to collect. But what we don't do, we don't take the telephone and call everybody, hey, your application is ready. I mean, that's why you receive an acknowledgement slip with your reference number, so that you could call the authority to follow up and find out the status of your application.
So my
So
assumption here, Warner, is that this process of a roughly 2 week timeline for approval is, as we said, a simple residential dwelling under 2.5. Is the process a little different for above 2.5? I think it's important as well at this point that we probably make a distinction between a draftsman and an architect. Perhaps you can shed some light on that, and maybe I can speak about my experience after. What's the difference between a draftsman and an architect? Obviously, apart from the known qualification.
Oh, okay. Well, a draftsman is someone who, well, I would say, who's not a certified and professional engineer, because the law is clear. There was an Architects Act that was passed, and there is a list of qualified persons who are architects, who persons who will, based on the law, tells you which and what area that those people are allowed to practice. So the act tells you that you are only allowed, well, persons who, like for instance, you as a normal person, and who may not be a draftsman, who could just design your own thing, or you could call yourself a draftsman, you are only allowed to practice within a certain footprint. So you are allowed to design a house which is less than 2,500, which is a residential or multifamily, or a commercial unit or commercial building less than, you cannot go beyond 1,500 square feet. And
2.5,
the
2,000,
law is clear. Pardon? No, the
2,500,
two
right?
five is 2,005 is for residential. For minor development, and major development is commercial, 1,500. So anything beyond 1,500, a registered architect can do that. And not just can do it, but it has to show certification when the application actually comes into planning. So if an application which is beyond 2.5 comes into planning, a certified stamp by an architect have to be on these drawings. It could be 2,501 square feet. It has to be certified by a certified architect. Similarly, with a commercial entity, if you are above 1,500 square feet, you require it to be certified by an architect. So that is the distinction between, well, I wouldn't say that this separates a draftsman and an architect, but that is the difference in terms of your application submission to planning. But that, bearing in mind, that does not say that a draftsman cannot design. The law says it, but he could design, but he could work alongside an architect, and the architect would take full responsibility for the works. Because the architect would tell the draftsman, well, I don't like this there, I don't like the aesthetics of this there, or I believe more windows should be there, or that type of tile, ceramic is not the right thing for the floor, because the architect, more or less, based on the law, deem themselves liable for those sorts of things. So they normally work alongside the registered architect.
A draftsman may seem more attractive based on pricing and budget. On average, at least in St. Lucia, a draftsman can cost anywhere between $3 and $5 a square foot for your drawings. So, for example, if your building is 1,000 square feet, $3 or $5, between $3,000 and $5,000 for the drawing fees or design fees. Whereas an architect, on average, might be between $8 and $11 a square foot plus more. But I will tell you that in as much as you can benefit from the savings short term, whereas you might go to a number of websites, eHouseplans, houseplans.com, and get a floor plan that you like, and present it to the draftsman to simply reproduce and submit. An architect, which is or who is fully trained and experienced, there are a lot more considerations, as in, when you go to the site visit, the airflow, layout, um, how things work together. And for me, my personal experience in trying to save money, I made a few mistakes in that. I had a floor plan, and I made no consideration for the weather side of the building or the wind flow of the building. All I knew is that I wanted to get a view, so we orient the house to face the view. But the back side of the house or the entry is where you have all of the weather, all of the rain, all of the wind, and it pose some challenges when you move into the house and you live and you realize that all the rooms are on the wind side and the rooms are typically closed, like bedrooms, and only open area to the view. Um, Beautiful view, but there is no airflow. And an architect, a trained architect, would have told you so. So when you're thinking of saving short term, make sure you consider the knowledge level of the two, because you might end up losing more.
I don't want to go into people's technical proficiencies and technical professionalism and those things like that. But there are some draftmen who are highly skilled, and they have lots of experience in the field. Some of them, I mean, based on experience, you actually learn, because some of them, as I say, they work alongside architects too. So some of them may have that similar type of, they may want to do the site visit with you too. They may not just take your site plan and just develop a site plan. They may want to tell you, well, the sun sets in that side and the shading might be different. There are a few of them out there who I think possess that kind of quality as well. So I work within the planning section, the planning, because we have two sides, so I work within the planning, physical planning section. And what we do, we are the ones appraising major applications. And as I said earlier, major applications, it's a wide spectrum. We deal with touristic development. So when you see all of the hotels being erected, we are the ones granting permission for those things. And each of those major applications, some of them may at times require environmental impact assessment, depend on the magnitude of the development. We deal with commercial buildings, we approve schools, recreational areas, multifamily residential, which falls in the category when you have 3 units, is viewed as a multifamily. So it's also a major application.
So Werner, now that we understand the process for a single residential dwelling under 2,500 square feet, what's the process for above 2,500 square feet? As you intimated earlier, it requires an architect stamp and perhaps engineering drawings. But what's the process like for an applicant?
Oh, okay. Well, the only if it's a residential, if it's a single family dwelling, which is above 2.5, the only difference you may encounter is having it certified by a registered architect. That's the only difference you would have with something above 2.5. Because you could have a flat house on grade, which is not on columns, and it's 2,800 square feet. It's the same process if it's a single family, but the only difference, you require it to be certified by a registered architect. Now, you could also fall within the category of having what is called a multifamily residential. Sometimes people use the term loosely and they call it condos, but it's not condos. So you would have 3 or 4 buildings side by side, and people say, oh, well, they're building a condominium complex. But really and truly, you are actually applying to planning to build a multi-family, because you have single family, so you have several of them, so it's a multi-family residential building. Now, anything above 3 units does not reside with the building inspectorate. it resides with the planning officer's side, which is the side which I am part of. And this process is slightly different. And obviously, well, not I won't say obviously, but many a times it will be more than 2,500 square feet. So again, you require architectural certification. But the process is slightly different in that with this one, you require more requirements. So for a multifamily building, you require fire approval, you require health approval, you require architectural certification, you require engineering certification, you require traffic management, you require solid waste management, you require electrical certification by a registered electrical engineer. So it's more than the average single family building. And this application now goes to a board. So again, this is one of those applications that we deal with on a Tuesday. When the application comes in, the front desk staff has to go through it to ensure that all of those requirements form part of the application. So so the checklist is clear. It speaks out of everything that you require, but compared to a single family where you do not require fire, you do not require solid waste, you do not require electrical, you do not require, but you require health. Health always forms part of any application. But for the multifamily, when it deals with the higher order application that goes to the DCA board for approval, you require all of those other things. And there may be instances based on the development, as I mentioned, you may require an ESIA, not for a multifamily, but that would be for a wider scale like hotels and those things. But for the multifamily, which I mentioned that most persons says that they're building a condominium complex. Now, in order for you to call whatever you have a condominium complex, you actually have to apply to the DCA for that. Now, the way it works, there are times you have what is called a party wall. So just let's say you have 5 houses stuck to each other, but all of them form one block, but they stuck to each other and they share common walls. So the center wall, there is no window because all of them share in that wall. So the two outer units would have windows on the outside. And those in the center would only have windows in the back and the front because the two center walls are shared with another unit. Now, what happens is after this is constructed, only after it's constructed, and you have shared amenities, you now apply to planning under the Condominium Act, which is another piece of legislation that we are guided by. And the same building officers who monitor, they are the ones who go to the site and pull up your approved drawings, go to the site and cross-reference what is on ground to what was approved by the DCA. And when that is done, you now a letter is prepared saying that whatever you have is consistent with what was approved, and then it's sent down to the land registry, and this is where they actually ascribe a block and parcel to each and every unit that you have. And by doing so, it allows that developer to be able to sell the unit individually. So you could have 5 units which you constructed, and as a result of applying for the Condominium Act, but in order to do so, I mean, I have to always, I like to explain that to people. Some persons would apply for multifamily buildings, and there may be some variations within what they applied for, and then they come to DCA and then they apply asking to have it done under the Condominium Act. And when the officer goes to the site, he realizes, but wait, but we approve 5 one-bedroom units, and we seen this one has free, they put a mezzanine floor, they change whatever. That alone, now that developer now would have to pay, or they would have to submit an addendum to retain whatever they have there, because in order to get it, it has to be consistent with what we approve. So we will not give you approve a condominium issuance or issue a condominium thing to you, and then there's a great variation of what you have on ground. So because development is something that is a factor of safety as well. So when someone applies and you deviate drastically, there is a factor of safety where DCA would be held liable for approving something and something happens. So no, imagine we grant a condominium license, a condominium certificate to someone, and they sell that, and the floor that they added by which was not approved, it collapsed, and something happened, and then they have to do a judicial review, and they have to come into the DCA to see what DCA approved. First thing they would say, how that was constructed, and the officer never saw it. So they would say that the monitoring was poor. They would say we didn't do due diligence. So that's why it's always good that persons are aware that if you know what you want to do it right, do it the right way, so it becomes less headache, and persons will. So that thing of persons saying this year things are always dragging and things they not do. So all of those things could be avoided if we just come in, ask questions, and do it the right way.
I have a question, one. My next question centers around the instance of your application having to go to the DCA board. And I understand that the board meetings for St. Lucia, are they typically once a month? Which applications actually have to go to the board meeting?
Okay. All major application goes to the board meeting. The single family residential building, it does not go to a board meeting, but the chairman ratifies the list, which means the chairman has to still go through the list. He may decide to, while going through the list, because the chairman don't sit at the technical committee meeting. It's something that has been happening for over the years. But what happens is the chairman could call any application if it's going through the list, and he's like, but why they approve this with 5 issues, and he believed that that issue does not warrant it being approved. He could call to see the application and have the officer explain, but why you all approve it, and for instance, the roof detail, or just a basic thing, anything that he thinks is not suited to be approved as. So he may choose to have the officer speak with him, and they may explain to him, and then based on his understanding, he may say okay. But so that is still ratified by the chairman. It doesn't go to a meeting of a board, but the chairman, and then the board ratifies the list. At every board meeting, every residential list that is ratified by the chairman is displayed into the board minutes, that every board member still has an opportunity to go through it, and they could also object or show no objection to anything that they feel free, or which is something that they're not clear as to. So every board member is still aware of what's going on. Now, as you ask about the board meeting, so the applications which goes to board meeting are those that the planning officers deal with. So you have, as I mentioned, the major ones, the multifamily ones, which is more than 3 units. You have the commercial ones, where you have things like a supermarket, a pharmacy, a gas station, a quarry would go. That's You have recreational things like a beach park, um, a tennis court. Um, you also have things like institutional things like schools. You have things like human resource development centers. You have hotels that would also go to the board. And similarly to building officers, when the application is submitted, it goes in to the physical planning officer, who's also the executive secretary to the DCA, and she assigns those applications to individual planning officers. Now, planning officers are not assigned to a zone. So um, she may feel, well, somebody's workload is too much, or this person's competency level may be better, or this person may have dealt with that application before, or one similar. She may assign it to you, and you have to go and conduct your own site visit. Normally, if you're not clear of what's happening, you could call the developer. You could do a joint site visit with the developer. You could also go with your other colleagues. So 2 or 3 of you all could also um, actually go to the site visit and have a discussion with the developer, look at the site conditions. When that is done, you are given a period of 2 weeks to have that application appraised. So after you conduct your site visit, you also have to take this application to the technical committee meeting, which is every Tuesday. When it goes to that meeting, a recommendation is made to the board, which is there is a meeting once every month. So when the recommendation is made to the board, based upon all of the issues that may have come up, or whether there may be no issues at all, it goes to the board meeting. The board members themselves, similar to our technical meeting, go through the application. So there are times, and I mean, the ownership is upon the board has a final decision. So our technical committee could decide, well, we are rejecting an application based upon on regulation and policy and law. I mean, we don't just do it at our window and fancy. We always have reason of rejecting the application. When it's done, the board, if the board believe within the wisdom that it should not be approved, the board could recommend approval. If we decide it's rejected. Similarly, if we recommend something for approval, and while going through the application, I mean, we are all human beings, we may miss out something, and a board member picks it up, and the board members say, but why is this application being recommended for approval when the legal document, there's an issue with it? Or there, so, and they could say, well, if it's a legal matter, let us defer it and have the officer or have the person deal with that legal aspect. Because we are all human beings, it could be that while we're going through the application, there is some, because on the board there is a lawyer, there are different disciplinaries, person of different disciplines on the board. So a lawyer could pick it up, or a designer or contractor, or any one of those board members could pick up something that may just change the recommendation that the technical committee had. And after that is done now, again, the board list is ratified as well. The letters are prepared, sent to the developers, but similarly to the residential building. When that is done, we the officers put the applications together. That's those that have no issues. But those that are approved with conditions, the conditions have to be fulfilled before you could get your stamp drawings released. So yes, your letter would say the board met on whatever date and recommended approval with conditions. You have 6 conditions. You have a letter saying approved, but you with conditions, which means you may have to change your site plan. You may have to change your simple things could be changed. They could tell you that all drawings were not certified by the architect. A few sheets were not certified. You may submit an application and you did not submit traffic management, or you may not have submitted solid waste management. Now it may just be an oversight on the person at the front desk receiving the application, because they have to go through every application. So can you imagine, there are 5, 6, 7, 8 people at the front desk hustling them, so they have to move very quickly not to keep this long line. So so there are so many things that could happen just by an application going to the board. But at the end of the day, the DCA board has the final say. They are the final decision making body. We are the technical officers. All we do is make recommendations. We do not grant approval. We recommend based upon what we have before us.
And my last question about a useful metric for anyone willing to look into build a house in St. Lucia is about the density, and that is the number of bedrooms that you can have in your building based on the size lot. The guideline that I've always used, I think it was to divide the lot by 871. I think it's 871 square foot for every bedroom, so you get the maximum number of bedrooms you can design within your structure on the lot.
Oh yeah, but that would not be that would normally be for that would not be for residential. That would more be for commercial or well, for the multifamily, you are required 50 bedrooms per acre. So, and as you said, the calculation for that is the area of your land. To know, use the area of your land over the 872 square feet. Now, the 872 square feet, you have to get, well, it's a factor. So it's similar to the what you do, you divide, I think it's 50 divided by the 43560. I think that would tell you. So it's 43560 divided by 50, right? So so 43,560 square feet is an acre, right? In square feet. So you divide, since the factor is you allowed 50 bedrooms per acre, so the 871.2, you divide that 4356 square feet by 50, it will give you the 872. Now, to know how many bedrooms you are allowed on that piece of land, if you're doing a multifamily unit, you would divide your square footage of your land by 872. So it will tell you you're allowed 8 bedrooms. Similarly, for the hotels, you require 75 bedrooms per acre. So you would divide the 75 by the acre, it would give you the figure, and you divide your square footage by that figure, and to tell you how many bedrooms your hotel or your touristic development or whatever the case may be is required to have on that particular parcel of land. So it's a factor. So it's a way persons could know. But as I said again, in our guide for developers, all of those things. But I'm happy that I could share that with persons so they would know that while they think we're not doing enough PR, the information is right there. Persons could always feel free to come in at any time. I mean, Mr. Maffrey, you have me on your program, which I am very elated and pleased to be on. But I mean, I know you know all of those things because you are somebody who frequent the DCA. I see you as one of the developers who always seek to get information, because you are telling me the figures there and you start to make me wonder if I'm wrong. But I see you know
No, you're right.
everything.
You're right.
No, I say I always admire you as an investor, a developer. You know, you always try to do it right, and you always come. Although sometimes you question some of our guidelines, and you know, and it's always good when people challenges things. You know, but I mean, we were not the ones, we came and we found it that way. But there is always room for improvement in development because development is dynamic. So we always welcome people like you who always who seek to challenge a lot of things, you know, and I always like that about you.
I think as we conclude, as we wrap up, I think the guidelines for safety, those can be, I guess, revisited from time to time as our environment changes. But certainly some of the guidelines that may seem frivolous, and I don't want to offend anybody, at least the executive secretary or the chairman of the board. I believe that for developmental reasons and in keeping with the way the world is going for housing, I think some of those policies just need to be reviewed maybe a little more frequently and new approaches as new technology is developed. But in conclusion, what I'd like you to share, with our viewers is just a general checklist for. I've just bought my piece of land. I worked so hard to save money. I finally got my piece of land, my little loan there. And I'm thinking of saving again to build my house. What does the checklist entails?
All right, so you purchase a piece of land. First thing you have to ensure that you have a copy of your survey plan and you have your land register in your person, which means your land register would show that the land belongs to you. It would have your name on it. In the top right corner, it would give you a block and parcel. It would give you the area in which, or the district, or the quarter in which your land is situated. It would give you your survey plan number. It would also give you the square feet, the area of land in hectares in the right hand corner. So that is critical to know that you have those two pieces of information, your survey plan and your land register. Another important thing to have with you is also what is called LRTP map extract, which shows you where your land fit in with other parcel numbers. So you would see roads, you would see names of roads. You may see that depending on where your land is situated. When you have this now, you now have to conceptualize with someone how, based on because remember, all lots and all plots of land are not shaped as squares or rectangles. Some of them may have triangular shapes, they may have diamond shapes. So whoever you're working with as a draftsperson, maybe an architect or yourself, if you can do the design, you need to know things like your setbacks. You need to know things like whether you have permission to use particular roads, because your survey plan would tell you where your legal access is. So, for instance, your legal access may be through a dirt road, and to the back of you, somebody had a development and they have their road passing right to your back. When you apply to the DCA, it may, and you showing your access through that concrete, nice paved concrete road, they will not approve your development, because they will ask you first to get permission from the landowner to use their road to access your development, because your survey plan, whoever is designing, has to ensure that they position your house and they show that your entry to your house is from your legal access. So it is always important that the first thing you have with you is your legal documents, to know where your legal entry point is, your size of your lot, where your boundaries are, so you know when you build in, you do not trespass on the neighbor's property. So there are a lot of things you have to take into consideration. Then you go ahead, conceptualize your building. But the mistake we normally make, we we design our plans, and then we want to go to the bank. And when we go to the bank tells you that you do not qualify for a house that big, because your debt service ratio or your size. So I think person who build in a house, the first thing you require to do is to go to the bank, find out from the bank, well, I purchased this piece of land, I want to build a home, and I would like to take a loan. The loans officer may ask you to bring whatever information you have, and they will tell you how much you are qualified for. When you are when you know what you're qualified for, you now sit with your designer or your architect and tell them, hey, I'm qualified for a loan of $300,000 based upon how it's calculated to build a house of whatever. So you divide your $327,000 by 250 a square feet, or $300 to build a house, which is the construction going price. I'm not sure. It depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for the type of houses that you build, Mr. My friend, you're looking at like 300 to 400 a square foot. Your type of houses may have granite and all soft touch cupboard doors, and but the person who's doing a starter house may have to go to the bank and find out what the bank can offer them, and then they could say, okay, I would like a 900 square feet house. So then your designer sits with you, designs a 900 square feet house. Then you start the process. Now you sit with him, you do not like that bedroom, you want a smaller bedroom, you want a, when you do that, your designer now applies to health. When they apply to health, you put your working drawings together, which is your architectural drawing, because it's a simple house. It's not above 2.5, it's below 2.5. You not require, it's one level. You don't require architectural, you don't require engineering, you don't require fire, none of those. Simple residential house. You now obtain your health approval. It's a document with a set of drawings, which is your site plan, showing your auxiliary water tanks, the footprint of your building, your driveway, where your septic tank will be, where your soccer well will be, the distance from your boundaries. That's a typical site plan. Showing your setbacks, your roof edges, typical site plan. You send it with your floor plan of your house to health, your sections, your elevation, and you submit all of that alongside 3 sets of drawings to DCA, with your legal, your land register in your name has to be updated, because land could change name so quickly. So normally we work something about 2 to 3 months for the latest. We don't go beyond that. You submit your land register, your survey plan, all of those things, so that the officer himself who receives that will be able to get easy access to your site when he gets the map sheet. Oh, so that is computer world. So it's the road behind computer world. You drive up. So it's easy to identify and use bearings, use landmarks to be able to get the site you go into. When that is done now, as I said, the process, you apply to DCA. There is a technical committee meeting. No issues. You get your drawings in 2 weeks. To call it 2.5 weeks, because there's this administrative process which normally take about 2 to 3 days before you actually get your stamp drawings. So in a nutshell, but I would always advise persons, do not everybody wants to build a fancy home. Everybody wants, but normally you need to know your budget. That's not my expertise, but I think I've seen so many persons who have applied to planning. When they receive the approval, and they now go to the bank, they now have to pay again. You have to pay the architect or the designer again because you want to now downsize your house because you have a 2,500 square feet house or a 2,000 square feet house. And just imagine you multiply that by $250,000 to construct, to give you your keys in your hand. You're looking at $407,000, and the average person in St. Lucia cannot afford a house like that. And you want to build a starter home. So it's always wise to know what you can afford when you go to the, or you actually start to spend money to pay, because it's costly to actually prepare plans. It's time consuming because you and that designer or that draftsman will be in a back and forth, back and forth. You don't like how the pitch is too high. You don't like how the entry to the bathroom is too small. You don't want a balcony. You just want, you want, because persons now into that modern architecture. You don't want no balcony. You don't want, you just want an entry port area, so you don't encourage visitors at your home. Some people are so sophisticated, so they design their homes in so many ways. You go online, as you said you could just go on this website, pull up this fancy looking floor plan, give it to the draftsman. When he actually develops it, you realize your house is 2,500. When he comes to you and he tells you, but to submit to DCA, you require architecture certification. But why? Because you never inquired. You need to always ask questions. You need to sit with your draftsperson. When you now spend so much money to have that stamped, the architect charges you $2,500 to stamp it. Okay, you go through the engineer pay you how much money, you pay how much money. When you come now to your bank tell you, but ma'am, you cannot afford to build this house. It does not allow us to give to you so much money, so you would have to redesign. Now you cannot get that money back again. The money is lost. The architect will not tell you, oh well, since you made the error, because if you now reduce it to less of what requires architectural certification, he will not give you half of the money. He has the money already. The engineer has the money. That was your fault. You have to produce new drawings. So it's always important that persons actually do the proper checks and balances before they actually. So even when people come to us and they ask questions, I use that same principle in speaking and tell them, have you gone to your bank? And they would watch you as if, but that's not your business. Why are you asking me that? But I say, no. I say, no, people, they do. Some person asking you, but why you ask me why you asking me to go to the bank? I say, no, I just want to know because you have not sent in your plans and you're asking for a copy of the checklist. So I've seen people who, when they come, they ask you, can you just assist me filling out a form, because there's this pink form you have to fill on the drawings, right? For your residential building, whatever building, you have them pink forms to fill. When they're filling it out, and I'm seeing they put in 2,800 square feet, right? And I'm going through the drawings. I'm not seeing any stamp on that. So I'm asking, saying, but you realize we cannot accept those drawings because they require to be certified for true. But my draftsman didn't tell me that, and they starting to watch you as if immediately that is where the problem arises. Oh, I went to planning and they tell me they're not accepting it, they require that. So those are some of the challenges we have faced, and I could tell you those things from Mr. Maffrey from experience. I could tell you, Mr. Maffrey, I mean, all of us attend to the public, but I'm one who frequent with the public. Sometimes the front desk staff wants somebody to speak to somebody. They would call me. They would call Mr. Cosmos. So sometimes even your work stays behind at times, because you want to assist people to avoid that sort of persons actually give planning a particular color, they paint you a particular way that when, oh, planning, oh my God, planning takes forever, But if only they do like what you normally do, come into this year, ask your questions, and then it's smooth sailing for you, because when we advise you and you go according to the advice you're given, we're not saying that we are the most perfect people. You may they have some minor thing changes to make there and there, because some people, they're still stubborn. They say, well, he said we could go, I think I'll still try and design it up, but because you know what you want. But at times when people come to the DCA, I think it's a one-stop shop, meaning when you live there and you go out there, when your plans come in, that persons who may be listening to the show, may have attended to, who have submitted drawings to planning, be it residential, be it commercial, or if Mr. Cosmas have attended to them, or Mr. Gustin, or Mrs. Fontenelle, whichever person who, as long as you come in and we advise you, I guarantee you that the time period that persons have been speaking of, it's so bad with planning and it's not that way, as long as you do it the right way and you come in and seek the information.
Well, if I've ever said that about planning, I think that you have really gone out of your way to correct that reputation. I particularly am appreciative of the advice that you would give and your perspective on the importance of how critical it is to know your budget first, even before you come to make an application or submission of a plan. And you work backwards. Your budget divided by the average square foot to build. And that's how you decide or get to understand what size house you should be trying to build. Unless you have plans later on to have a more income that would allow you to get a larger loan, of course, ultimately, if you can build it for cash. So you've been listening to yet another enthralling episode of the Caribbean Property Investing Podcast. DCA and planning is a very popular topic. We get quite a lot of questions and feedback required for that area. So I want to thank Mr. Houson. As we said before, let's keep the conversation going. Check us out online, CaribbeanPropertyInvesting.com, our YouTube page, LinkedIn, Instagram, and just reach out to us. As I always say, everyone needs somewhere to live, so you can own yours. Until next time.
I love my community. It teaches you the importance of being together even for difficult times. Business owners doing their best to make it through. Fishermen and farmers working hard to put food on our tables. Nurses caring for the sick shows me who we are made of. People who care. I guess it's about growing together.
To ruminate, to create your ultimate living space. And at Courts, you'll find what you need. Choose from our wide range of furniture, electronics, and accessories to complete your space. We're here and ready to assist. Give us a call to place your order. Shop online at shopcourts.com or visit us in store. So ruminate at Courts, bringing value home.
Congratulations and thank you for tuning in to the Caribbean's first property investing podcast. We want to help Caribbean people create wealth and achieve financial freedom through property investing. Our show provides general advice based on personal experiences and is for educational purposes only. For more information, resources, and past episodes, visit us at CaribbeanPropertyInvesting.com. Remember to click the subscribe button so you never miss a show. Let's go.